thank you for tuning in to another edition of Outside the Shop with me, your host, Darrell D. Lane, as always, where I talk about everything I don't get the chance to talk about on my regular podcast, Barbershop Sports Talk, which is on Spotify, iTunes, Stitcher, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, iHeartRadio, all your podcasting platforms. Just had a great podcast that I released today where I had Jackson Gatlin on, host of the Locked On Rockets podcast, talked a little bit about Russell Westbrook, James Harden, that dynamic of them both requesting trades. Also got a chance to have TJ McBride on the show. He covers the Denver Nuggets, and kind of mentioned how he thought Nikola Jokic was better than Anthony Davis, which I thought was kind of crazy, but interesting nonetheless, and kind of went into winning players and losing players. Really interesting conversation, so I would recommend checking that out. Now for this show. Steelers versus Ravens. Steelers win 19-14. The Steelers, are they like the most suspect, really good team we've seen in a long time? Like, they're 11-0, but like I still don't think they can beat the Kansas City Chiefs. For some reason, I still feel like they'll be one and done in the playoffs. They have the receivers, right? They have the Deontay Johnsons. They have the Juju Smith-Schusters. They have all those guys. They have the Claypools. They have the Ebrons. They have a solid running game. They have Ben Roethlisberger, a Hall of Fame quarterback, Mike Tomlin, one of the best coaches in the NFL. They have an elite defense, but I'm still not sold on them because of like just lackluster games like this where I just want to see them dominate more. So I just want to ask that all to you guys. Are the Steelers overrated even though they're undefeated? Now to the Ravens. How bad was RG3 in the Ravens passing attack? I think I counted 10 catches? Something like that. 10 catches? In an NFL game? When we know how, like, emphasized passing is? That's insane to me that happened. Robert Griffin III, 2.8 yards per pass. 0 touchdowns, 1 interception. The Ravens offense just, the Ravens passing offense in particular just looked remedial. They looked awful. They looked dazed, confused, didn't know what to do. Kind of embarrassing, and it kind of makes you wonder, even when Lamar Jackson comes back, where do they go from here? Their offense is just bad, and they're not playing very well, so I think that's definitely a concern for Baltimore. Now I want to get to this. The College Football Playoff Committee recap. So, last show I said I was really interested to see where Ohio State would be and Cincinnati would be. Now it turns out they ended up being the same places as the top 7 remain the same. Number 1, Bama. Number 2, Notre Dame. Number 3, Clemson. Number 4, Ohio State. Number 5, Texas A&M, and number 6, we had Florida, and number 7, we had Cincinnati. So the top 7 stayed the same. Now, what's really interesting here, and what I really started to think about was this. Why is Ohio State still ranked 4? Now, before Buckeye Faithful, you come at me. Let me just put it to you this way. They have not done better than A&M on the season. Texas A&M is 5. Ohio State is 4. Now, I know the eye test might tell you Ohio State is a better football team than Texas A&M. But the eye test would also tell you Ohio State is better than both Clemson, who lost, by the way, and Notre Dame, who is undefeated. And Ohio State's undefeated, too. The eye test will tell you Ohio State's better than both of those teams. The eye test would tell you that Ohio State is the second best team in the country. But the College Football Committee does not have them ranked number 2 in the country. They have Notre Dame ranked number 2. So, Texas A&M. Their only loss is to Alabama, who was the 1 seed in the College Football Committee's rankings. So obviously that's a very, very good loss. And it was in the beginning of the year. And they have the best win. They beat a Florida who the College Football Committee has 6th. We know what Kyle Trask has been doing for Florida. He's one of the Heisman contenders, one of the Heisman frontrunners, and they beat that team. And they're in the SEC, and they've been out here in the streets playing games while the Big Ten started late. So I think when you factor all that in, you have to start looking at Texas A&M potentially jumping Ohio State for that 4 spot. So now, NBA Christmas. The schedule got released last night. We're going to have the Pelicans at Heat at noon. We're going to have the Warriors at Bucks at 2:30. And we're going to have the Nets at Celtics at 5 p.m., Mavericks at Lakers at 8 p.m. for the showcase game, and the Clippers at Nuggets at 10:30 p.m. to cap off the night. Now, what I always think about is interesting about the NBA Christmas is this. It really tells you, as my friend Ben Karen would say, who the somebody and the nobodies are. It changes every year. They put the teams on that have the best stars, the best franchises, the best fandom, the thing that they think is going to get the best ratings, because that's really the unofficial kickoff of the NBA season when people really start watching. So it tells a lot about what they think about these teams, right? Pelicans, they have Zion. The Heat, they were just in the NBA Finals. The Warriors, we know what they've done the last few years, and they're moving into the Chase Center. They have Steph Curry, who's one of the most popular players in the NBA. You have the Bucks with Giannis Antetokounmpo, two-time MVP. You have the Nets, Kevin Durant, Kyrie Irving in Brooklyn, the top market at Boston, one of the most hollowed franchises in the NBA, a young ascending player in Jason Tatum. You have the Mavericks at Lakers as the showcase. LeBron James obviously is the face of the NBA. And with Luka Doncic, who is becoming one of the most popular players in the NBA, and a superstar in his own right, a young superstar in his own right. And then you have the Clippers and the Nuggets, who had an interesting playoff battle in the Western Conference semifinals last postseason. So, obviously, my biggest takeaway, the NBA is really high on Luka Doncic. They think Luka Doncic is going to be the next LeBron. They think he's going to be the face of the league. I'm not saying he's going to be better than Giannis. I'm not saying he's going to be better than a Joel Embiid. I'm not saying he's going to be better than an Anthony Davis in the years to come. What I'm saying is in terms of being the face of the league. Now, let's remember this. Being the face of the league doesn't mean you're the best player in the league. There was a time where Steph Curry in 2016, when he's averaging 30 points per game, the Warriors had 73 wins. And Steph Curry were the face of the league. Steph Curry was the face of the league, but Steph Curry wasn't the best player in the league. I think that's where we're trending with Luka Doncic. I think the league is kind of manufacturing that, and I think they believe he can be that really young star. It seems like a lot of people like him. He has the really good international appeal that they can market and brand. So I think that's a big props to Luka, the fact that the NBA decides to put him up against LeBron James on Christmas for their primetime game, because they could have picked Kevin Durant, they could have picked a Kawhi Leonard, they could have picked the Warriors, they could have picked the Bucks. There's a lot of stars and a lot of teams they could have picked to go against LeBron James and the defending champion Lakers on Christmas, but they picked Luka. That tells you all you need to know about what Adam Silver in the league thinks about Luka Doncic. So lastly, I want to get to this. Gelo Ball signs with the Detroit Pistons. Now, for those of you who don't know, he is brothers to LaMelo Ball and Lonzo Ball, both drafted respectively number 2 and number 3 overall in the NBA draft. LeVar Ball has finally spoken into existence. He has 3 of his sons in the NBA. Now, whether you love or hate LeVar Ball, whether you're indifferent, you cannot deny this. This guy grew up from Compton, LA. And now he's put himself in a position where he's going to have 3 sons that are in the NBA and have the potential to be multimillionaires. If there are any parents out there listening, that's all you want for your children, right? If I can tell you that no matter what happens, you're going to have your 3 kids, they're all going to be multimillionaires and be set up for success, to be able to generate generational wealth for not only them, but their kids and their kids, you'd say, job well done. LeVar Ball, I don't necessarily agree with his methods. I know a lot of people out there don't agree with his methods, but it worked for that particular family, that particular circumstance. And now they're reaping the rewards. And Gelo Ball, a guy that people thought could not play in the NBA, he's going to get his chance, and he's going to get his tryout. And maybe, who knows, LeVar will get his dream of having all 3 ball boys play on the same team. So that's all we have for this edition of Outside the Shop. Just like I said, some tidbits. If you want to check out the latest podcast, where I have Jackson Gatlin on and I have TJ McBride on, and talk about the Denver Nuggets, Western Conference hierarchies, James Harden, Russell Westbrook, etc., then tune into that podcast. I just released that. You can find that on Spotify, iHeartRadio, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, all your podcasting platforms and apps. And if you want to check out the next podcast that's going to be released Friday, I'm going to have my friend Ben Karen, host of the Sports Popular Podcast, and we are going to preview the NFL and college football. We're going to have a lot to dive into, and we're going to bring the heat, so check that out. So thank you guys for tuning into this edition of Outside the Shop with me, your host, Darrell Lane. God bless.